As I've stated many times, the power doesn't reside within the visible government structures, it's always in the shadows, especially within the intelligence services, the intelligence communities. For instance, the CIA is far more powerful as an entity than the American state, just as MI6 is more powerful than the British state, but more powerful than those is the Jesuits. The Jesuits are the most powerful intelligence organization on earth, and the Jesuit Illuminati Psychiatric Combine, the Combine, is without a doubt the most incredible intelligence gathering network on earth. Indeed, it's set up in such a way, especially initially the Jesuits were confessor-priests, and they remain confessor-priests for the arch-nobility. The arch-nobility, being ultra-Catholic, still remain with the confessor-priests. Thus, they are liable to blackmail by Jesuitry. And indeed, when the Jesuits were suppressed in 1773, the Barbarian Illuminati was created by Lorenzo Ricci as a new way of gathering information. The Illuminati set up a massive spy network across Europe, which would hopefully be as strong as the Jesuit network that had just been supposedly crushed, even though it wasn't crushed. Indeed, supposedly the Bavarian Illuminati was itself suppressed in 1785, but it kept going and was visible during the French Revolution. Thus, that's also a lie. But the Jesuits and the Illuminati are essentially one conglomerate. The Jesuits are just the more clerical sphere, and the main sphere, the Black Pope Superior General, being the most powerful person within the Jesuit Illuminati network. And the Illuminati are more technocratic. Indeed, a lot of the people who joined the Illuminati initially did so because they believed that the whole idea of the Illuminati was to crush the Catholic Church and replace the governments and religions with a system of philosophy and science. But because they subjugated the Catholic Church, they didn't need to destroy it. Thus, their aims changed. And what with the restoration of the Jesuits, the Illuminati kind of folded back, returned to the fold of the Jesuits, returned to the bosom of the Jesuits. And by the start of the 20th century, we begin to see the psychiatric elements of the Combine. Now, these are some of the most nefarious. The psychiatric profession in many ways acts as in the same way as the old Catholic confessional, and you have to be very careful what you say, because if you say something that is against the Combine, you could end up on 5 or 6 different psychiatric drugs, which are essentially a pharmaceutical straitjacket. And I've been foolish enough to do that, and now I'm forced to take 6 different pills. And indeed, you could also, as I have in the past, ended up in an asylum. And indeed, I believe that the truth is in the asylums. I had the best conversations of my life in the asylum, and I have the best conversations of my life with people that are considered mentally ill by the state. But these same supposedly mentally ill are termed useless eaters, and they are crushed by society. They are put down by society. But indeed, we sometimes see people posting on their Facebook pages about mental health awareness, but the minute you show symptoms in front of them, they run a mile. Thus, it's all armchair activism, just like most of the causes that seem to generate and be spread among social media. Like, I remember when that Coney 2012 business occurred and everybody started posting about it, but nobody actually had a clue what they were really posting about. and apparently the guy wasn't that bad anyway. And indeed, stuff which is happening in the heart center of Africa, I don't believe it's my problem. I look on a more local scale. But indeed, actually that is a lie, because I am working against a global conspiracy, so I suppose I don't think on that much of a local scale. Anyway, that's irrelevant. But the power structure that the Combine are attempting to set up is certainly going to be Romanoid in structure. It's going to be feudal, with an ultra aristocracy ruling and some sort of church which will accompany the feudal system. And indeed, perhaps that's why the Jesuits are keeping the white papacy, the white pope, and the Vatican structure as it is, so that they can use the Vatican structure as and when they need to re-implement the feudal system. And indeed, I believe this will first be reintroduced in Britain and the USA, which are the two papal fiefs, as decreed by the charters of 1213 and 1215. Indeed, regarding the Combine, in Ken Kesey's novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, we're told of the Combine, which has its power reaching into the asylum, but is also a secret society that is sort of beginning to run the world and wants to turn the world into drones and slaves, and that the asylum in Cuckoo's Nest is just a microcosm of the world, this sort of conglomerate of different secret societies wishes to create a world of drones and slaves. And that's what the Jesuit Illuminati Psychiatric Combine wishes to do. That is exactly the description. Unfortunately, by the time of the Merry Pranksters tour, Kesey had been perverted by the CIA and was working for the CIA by this point. But when he'd first been involved in MKUltra experiments and written One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, this was before he'd been compromised and perverted by the CIA, and indeed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is Kesey during his purity, so it should still be respected, and indeed the mentions of the Combine within Cuckoo's Nest should be seen as a warning. And indeed, that is what we are living under. We are living under a regime that wishes for all of the population to be drones and slaves. This is why the education system has been brought down. And what with Fabian socialism, we've had mass social engineering in Britain. And of course, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Indeed, John Rawlings Rees in the early 1920s, who was an early head of the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, he believed that society could be policed by 5,000 brainwashed individuals. If you completely brainwash them, you would need no police force, because these 5,000 individuals would keep all the other individual drones in place. And indeed, perhaps that's what they're testing now. Indeed, around that era, we also had the publication of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and most people think that Aldous Huxley is a countercultural icon because of the Doors of Perception, but this is horseshit, because he wrote Brave New World not as a warning of the coming dystopia, but as a blueprint for the coming dystopia. And indeed, this leads on to Philip K. Dick's A Scanner Darkly, and he wrote A Scanner Darkly as a warning of the future dystopia rather than the blueprint. So we have Brave New World and A Scanner Darkly coming against each other, and it's Philip K. Dick who was murdered by the CIA. Meanwhile, Aldous Huxley died a CIA agent in his wife's arms. So if you were to compare the two figures, which one is the countercultural figure and which one is the is the system figure. Indeed, Aldous Huxley was very much tied in with Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary is another one you shouldn't trust. He was completely CIA. As I've stated, Ken Kesey became CIA, but only later. So, Cuckoo's Nest and the original Kesey is no problem, but sometime in the early 60s he was compromised by the CIA, and perhaps blackmailed, as the CIA do, and the CIA operate in a very similar way to how the Jesuits did. Indeed, they've learned how to behave from the Jesuits. The MI6 have also learned how to behave from the Jesuits. And the actual leader of MI6 for the past 300 years has been the head of the Petty dynasty, which have been the Marquesses of Lansdowne. And indeed, these heads of MI6 have always been from a Jesuit dynasty, so it isn't a surprise at all that these intelligence agencies act and bully in the same way as the Jesuits, and these intelligence networks are all part of the extended combine that wishes to make drones and slaves out of the populace. And as I've stated, we seem to be seeing the Vatican is being kept as it is, but also we're seeing the rise of the New Age, so I believe there may be some sort of coordination coming in place between the Catholic Church and the New Age movement. Indeed, the Catholic Church is one of the most important Catholic dynasties in Britain is the Percy family, and they are the heads of the de-populationist agenda, and they are also very heavily influenced, a very big influence on the New Age movement, almost as much as Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit who began the New Age movement. Thus, the New Age movement is wholly Jesuitical, and indeed they are promoting Malthusianism while they believe they are promoting environmentalism, which is really quite interesting. But it all feeds into the agenda of the Combine, and the Combine are the invisible power structure that rule above the visible power structure. The visible power structure is the ultra-aristocracy, the Vatican, and one could even announce the Knights of Malta as a visible society. Meanwhile, the invisible societies are the Jesuit Illuminati psychiatric profession. The psychiatric profession is visible, but nobody realizes that it is actually invisible, and they are simply there to stigmatize you and to shove all these drugs down your throat and keep you as placid as possible, especially truth seekers. They are specifically aware of truth seekers. So the Jesuit Illuminati Psychiatric Combine adores psychiatry because it filters out the truthers. It filters out anyone who may speak any truth in revelation of the Jesuit Illuminati conglomerate that is ruling the world and is attempting to turn us into slaves. So psychiatry is one of the most important parts of the Combine, and is one of the arch defenders of the Combine by filtering out truth seekers. And as I've stated before, the truth is in the asylums, and the truth is in the asylums because the Combine have placed them there, and even within the asylums the Combine are in control. Despite the seeming comfortable nature of the asylums, the Combine are at work at all times, as all of the people, the staff, are taking notes about you the whole time, and taking notes of what you're saying and whatnot. So you are under complete surveillance, just as you are under complete surveillance outside. We live in a surveillance state now. We live in a security state. Indeed, another visible aspect of the system is the police state. So the police state, the Vatican, and the ultra-aristocracy are all the visible parts of of the system that is attempting to turn us into drones and slaves. Meanwhile, it's the Jesuit Illuminati psychiatric combine that are actually perverting the culture and effectively turning us into the drones and slaves they wish us to be, so that in the future the ultra aristocrats will rule above vast estates. I believe there will be estates. You will either be tied to an estate, a corporation, or a reduction, and as the edicts of Diocletian and Constantine, you shall not be able to leave the estate, the corporation, or the reduction. You and your family will be bound to the estate, corporation, or reduction for eternity. Thus, we are entering a new dark age. And indeed, that is what the Jesuit Illuminati psychiatric combine wish for, is a dark age. The ultra aristocracy wish for a dark age because they believe that the only way that human beings should be governed is through feudalism. The Knights of Malta want a dark age. The higher echelons of the Vatican would be happy with a dark age. The police state are a dark age, complete dark age element. In a golden age there would be no need for such a heavy, brutal police state, and indeed, why is the police state so brutal in the middle of the countryside here? This is a police state of complete totalitarian fascist bullying, and it's vile. And not only that, in tandem with the police state we have the psychiatric element of the combine, which is just as unethical and immoral as the police state itself. And that's me done for the morning. I'm going to get a coffee.